I'm Mark Grundmeier, Soybean Product Manager for Latham High-Tech Seeds. And this is the start, or my start, of our 2020 virtual soybean tour in lieu of our normal field day when we can all get together and enjoy some fellowship and time together and a good meal. We're doing this all online this year. And you know, we can't really say there's very many positive things that come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. But at least there's a couple things that are kind of positive from this perspective, so to speak. One of the things that we can do with this is maybe delve a little bit further into history, because when we're out here at a field day, normally we're so busy and we got so many people running around and trying to get things done and trying to disseminate as much information as possible that we don't really have time to sit back and kind of reflect on the history of some of the things we're doing and some of the things that we've done. So this morning I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the history of ironclad. And when our marketing team put this together, they talked about it as being select products built for battle. That's what the ironclad whole concept is all about, and it truly is. And it's one of those things where let's go back to maybe several decades, to 30, 40 years ago, and farmers planting soybeans back then really had a tough decision to make, because if they had a certain problem out there, agronomic problem, maybe iron deficiency chlorosis, maybe soybean cyst nematode or Phytophthora, they had to choose a soybean that would defense against that particular problem. And back then, one of the things that they gave up, unfortunately, to have that defense was yield. And so it just kind of got stuck in the back of many, many farmers' minds that if I've got some kind of a disease problem or whatever, I'm going to give up yield this year in order to combat that. So back in around 2011, 2012, Bill Latham, John and Chris's father, who is still an active member of our soybean team, kind of challenged our team to come up with a concept or a way that we could let farmers know that not all of these defensive soybeans anymore are poor yielders. Okay? So that got everybody thinking, and long story short, we kind of delved back into some military history, if you will. Bill himself was a Marine air pilot, and some others of us were kind of military history advocates as well. And so we remembered back in the days of the Civil War, just prior to the Civil War, almost all the naval warships were made out of wood, okay? And that was good for them back then, but around the time of the start of the Civil War, maybe a few years before that, people started thinking about, well, what happens if we take these wooden warships and plate them with iron, and that'll give them some great defense. And so that's the name ironclad, thus it was born. So one of the most famous naval war battles of the Civil War was the battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack. And if you want to take some time, you can Google that and get all the information you want about the Monitor versus the Merrimack. Long story short, it was a draw. Neither team really won that battle, but it really changed the course of military history for many, many years. Well, it just changed it. After that, it was never the same. Wooden warships were no longer made. Everybody was making these warships that maybe they were made out of wood originally, but now they're plated with iron, hence the ironclad designation. So that kind of became our focus back in around that 2011, 2012 standpoint. And you know, it also brought to mind another very important agronomic issue that we had out there in the fields in north central Iowa, southern Minnesota, was iron deficiency chlorosis. So it's kind of a two-headed whammy a little bit there, so to speak, in that ironclad is talking a little bit about, you know, great defense but also iron deficiency chlorosis. That ironclad is well known for handling that particular problem also. So that's how we got started with this whole ironclad concept. you know, it steamrolled from there, and we got the ball rolling on that. 2013 product guide for Latham Seeds was the first to come out and actually introduce ironclad to the general population. And the interesting thing about that is, since day one, after that initial launch of ironclad, we have never had a soybean be our #1 selling product that wasn't an ironclad. All of our #1 selling beans since then have been ironclad products. In fact, over the last 3 or 4 years, our top 3 selling soybeans have all been ironclad products. So it just shows that the tremendous amount of reception that we've had, the positive responses that we had from the ironclad concept, and everybody's now realizing that ironclad means, yes, great defense, but also powerful offense. And that kind of gets back to those ironclad warships back in the Civil War time and stuff like that as well. So that's where we get ironclad, just to kind of re-emphasize, if I can, what an ironclad soybean is. So in order to make ironclad, a soybean has to have a specific gene for soybean cyst nematode, whether that be PI88 or Peking or Hartwig or whatever they are. And it also has to have a specific major gene for Phytophthora root rot. C gene, K gene, 3A gene, etc., etc. Then the other thing it has to have, as we already mentioned, iron deficiency chlorosis. It's going to have a 2.2 score or better on IDC. Same thing with brown stem rot, 2.2 or better on BSR. And then either white mold or sudden death syndrome has to have a 2.2 score for those as well. And some of our ironclad products that we're coming out with here lately actually have both white mold and sudden death. We're going to have to come up with a new name for that. Maybe we're going to call them super ironclads or something like that down the road. We'll get back to you later on that part of it. So yeah, and you know, I guess the other thing is here for our 2021 launch, it's kind of what we're talking about today, is the new products and new things coming out for 2021. The really cool thing is that of the 56 soybean varieties that are going to be in our 2021 product guide, half of them, 28 of them, are ironclad products. Now, if you'd have told me back in 2011, 2012 that we'd eventually get to the point where half of our lineup was ironclad, I'd say no way. We'll never be able to find those products. You know, it's tough enough to find just a couple. But modern breeding techniques and just the fact that our team focuses so much on that, we've really come up with a great amount of ironclad soybeans. For the 2021 seed product lineup, we've got 3 new ironclads that we want to talk just briefly about. We'll go into them a little bit later in more detail, but our 3 new ironclads for 2021 are #1, L0269L, which is a 0.2 maturity brand new Liberty product that we're bringing forward that's ironclad. And then we also have 2379E3, a 2.3 maturity product that, you know, I have to tell you, it just looks gorgeous out there. I've seen that product all the way from south of Mankato, Minnesota, down to Prairie City, which is east of Des Moines, Iowa, and it looks phenomenal everywhere I've seen it, north to south and east to west as well. And then our last new ironclad for 2021 is the 2638E3 at a 2.6 maturity. This is an exciting new line. It's got great yield potential going forward. As you know, we've already talked, most ironclads do. The thing about 2638E3 that I'm really interested in here in 2021 is that our breeder kind of told us this thing works best east of the Missouri River. Don't take it out into South Dakota too far. Don't take it out into Nebraska, those kind of things. And we're going to challenge that this year because we've got some plots out there with it in, and we're going to see. Just looking at the way the plant itself acts and behaves, so to speak, in some stressy environments. We've had plenty of those in 2020 here. I think it might go west a little further than what that breeder really told us. So we'll see. And so that's kind of it for the new ironclads. thank you for listening. We really do appreciate your attendance here virtually. Want to remind you that on this virtual tour, I think Gary Geske is scheduled to come up next and talk to you a little bit about seed treatments. So have a great virtual day.